Today's video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Recently I found myself in Stoney Stratford for my cousin's wedding. This is a delightful town in Milton Keynes with a lot of historical significance. For me, its greatest claim to fame is doubling for Penrith in the film Withnail and I. I was staying in a hotel called The Cock. Stop sniggering at the back there. Just a short distance down the road there was another hotel called The Bull. And that's quite interesting. Stoney Stratford, in fact, claims to be the origin point for the phrase, a cock and bull story. Now, if you're not familiar with this phrase, it basically means an untrue, ridiculous story, a tall tale or an elaborate lie. To understand the origin story for this phrase, you need to know a little bit about the Cock, the Bull, and Stoney Stratford. The town sits on Watling Street, an ancient Roman road that ran from Dover to Wroxeter. The road crosses the River Ouse, and that's where the Stratford part comes from. Strat means street, ford means river crossing. Stoney just means stony. It was common to build towns at river crossing. Another one you might have heard of is London. Many of the roads the Romans built are still in use, and of course Watling Street is no exception. As the centuries passed, Stoney Stratford became an important stopping point for coaches travelling west to east or vice versa. Many of the pubs here are in fact coaching inns. These were places where travellers could get a meal or perhaps a bed for the night. This lasted until 1838, when the London and Birmingham Railway opened nearby and offered a much faster route. Several of the coaching inns survived the coming of the railways and lasted long enough to see roads become dominant once again. The Bull has another transport-related claim to fame in that it was where the first meeting was held to plan the Grand Junction Canal. So what does all this have to do with the phrase? I don't know, but maybe the answer will come after this sponsor message. If you want the finest VPN available to humanity, you want it here and you want it now, may I recommend Surfshark. Surfshark gives you unrivaled access to information online. These days there's a lot of information from a lot of people with a lot of agendas. It can be hard to tell what's true and what's, well, a cock and bull story. With Surfshark's international servers, you can get around censorship and region locks in your country to find out what people don't want you to know. You can make yourself truly anonymous online, hiding yourself and your information from hostile eyes. And uniquely, Surfshark allows you to do this on an unlimited number of devices. What is undeniable truth is that if you follow the link in the description below and enter the code JAGO, you can get 83% off a 2-year plan with 3 months extra free. And if you dispute the truth that Surfshark is an excellent service, they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. Alright, so that's the truth out of the way, let's get back to the falsehoods. So, the origin of the phrase. Well, coaches didn't just carry people, they brought the post and they brought the news. They were the fastest method of long-distance communication of any kind for much of the country. The purported origin of the phrase is this. Passengers from London, Birmingham and other big cities would stop at the coaching inns, and locals would ask them about the news. Well, some passengers thought to have a bit of fun and would make up news stories. The Cock and the Bull had a sort of informal competition going on, where the passengers would compete to come up with the most outlandish stories that the locals would fall for. And so people in the cities came to refer to false stories, what we'd now call fake news because we have no sense of elegance anymore, as cock and bull stories. Is this really the origin? Well, it's hard to say. Other towns have also laid claim to be the origin point, including Stoney Stratford and Stilton. All the sources I've found online point to the earliest mention of the phrase being in a play called Law Tricks, written by John Day in 1608. The line there is, "What a tale of a cock and a bull he told my father." Note a cock and a bull, implying that he's not identifying anything specific. I should note that the Cock and the Bull inns both predate the 17th century. In the 1621 book, The Anatomy of Melancholy, the sentence, "Some men's whole delight is to talk of a cock and a bull over a pot," i.e. spin a lot of nonsense while enjoying a pint or two. Of course, both cock and bull are words with very masculine connotations, for Various reasons that I'm not going to go into on a family-friendly channel. So, perhaps it once had associations with bravado. We've all met that one guy who spins unlikely tales of how tough, brave, or strong he is. There is a phrase of similar vintage in French known as coq à l'âne, or from a cock to a jackass. In other words, a story that rambles on from one subject to another and makes little sense, like one of my scripts. One suggestion is that the phrase jumped the English Channel and le roast beef changed the donkey to a cow. There may be another origin. In 1692, in his Boyle lecture against atheism, Richard Bentley uses the words that cocks and bulls might discourse as an image of absurdity. Now, obviously, the phrase was known, but it suggests that perhaps it alluded to a specific story. Some historians believe that it's a reference to fables in which animals can talk, which are, of course, very common, paging Mr. Aesop. What I wonder is whether there's some work of literature or folk tale that was once very well known, but is now lost. So it seems that, like so many phrases, the origins are lost in the mists of time, and there is no shortage of explanations that could provide our answer. Who knows, maybe some diligent researcher will discover that it does, in fact, owe its origin to those coincidentally named pubs in Stoney Stratford. However, the suggestion that it originates with tall tales and one-upmanship between stagecoach passengers would appear to be, well, a cock and bull story. I do hope you enjoyed this story, which was as true as I could make it. If you did, please do click the like button and consider subscribing for more. This is quite a long way from this channel's usual subject matter, but I don't know, coaching inns, transport, there's kind of a link there, maybe? What do you think the explanation is? Have you heard a different one? I'd be interested to hear it in the comments section below. Thanks as ever to my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon. You are the Gallus Domesticus to my boss Taurus. Thanks also to Surfshark for enabling me to do a video that includes the word cock without worrying that YouTube censorship bots will catch it and demonetize me. And I'll see you all again very soon. Cheerio.